You're listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
Presented by CMH Heli Skiing and Peak Performance.
Are you ready for an unforgettable ski experience that takes care of everything? Well, visit one of Club Med's mountain resorts and experience the thrill of the slopes without having to worry about a thing. With their all-inclusive packages, you'll get your lift passes, you'll get lessons, delicious meals, exciting après activities, even childcare for the kids. All that's included in the price so you can focus on what matters most, carving perfect turns and enjoying breathtaking views. Visit www.clubmed.us, call 1-800-CLUB-MED, or talk to your travel advisor and book your ski escape getaway today. Peter Landsman, Mr. LiftBlog himself, welcome to the Low Pressure Podcast. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for being on. So first off, I want to give you huge congratulations for completing a pretty epic feat. The feat essentially was you visited every single ski resort in North America and Canada. Is that, to put it very simply, correct?
That is correct. And also every non-ski lift in the US and Canada, which not a ton of them, but not all lifts are ski lifts. I would say probably 90% are.
So like the Disneyland, I remember when I was a kid, I did the Disneyland gondola, and there's I think you posted one at the Hard Rock in Miami.
Yeah, quite a few of the state fairs here in the States have gondolas or chairlifts going across the midway, and a lot of zoos, kind of aquariums, you name it. Anywhere there are people wanting to have fun, there are some sort of aerial conveyance.
Aerial conveyance? Are you an aerial conveyance enthusiast?
I am.
Aerial
I'm guilty.
conveyance connoisseur?
Yeah, I'm guilty of that for sure.
Well, that's a pretty amazing thing, and I want to get into some of those travels and whatnot. But why don't we like let people know a little bit more about who you are and like how this all came about? So we were chatting the other day, and you told me you grew up in like Washington State and learned to like ski in those areas.
That's correct. Grew up, born and raised in the Seattle area. First started skiing at Snoqualmie Pass, which is only about 45 minutes away from Seattle. Awesome mountain, gets tons of snow. And then I kind of graduated in high school to Crystal Mountain, which is a bigger mountain near Mount Rainier and an awesome place to ski as well. And that was really where my love of skiing and lifts formed. And then I went to college out on the East Coast in New England. Saw a ton of lifts and ski resorts there. And then after college, I wanted to ski some more. So I went to Jackson Hole to work. And 12 years later, I'm still working at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort.
There you go. What did you study in school back east?
Political science, which I have put to great use in my career as a lift supervisor.
Well, it helps you, I'm sure, when you're like traveling around all the different regions and you learn about like the local politics, and I'm sure that is something that might help you out in your travels.
Yeah, and sometimes there's some politics at ski resorts too.
Yeah, fair. True. So what was it that like, okay, so everyone listening to this show is a skier. It's the podcast for skiers, and we all love to ski. I personally have a huge affinity for the chairlift myself, but what was it that made you like want to fall in love and learn about chairlifts? And like, some people collect baseball cards, some people watch baseball, some people collect Pokemons or play Magic or whatever it is that they do. They collect cars. What is it about chairlifts that made you focus in on that?
Well, first of all, every single chairlift is unique. The ski area where I grew up at Snoqualmie Pass, every single chairlift was a different color, and that kind of fascinated me as a kid. They have, I think, 30 different lifts there, and they're all the same color now, but back in the day, some were green, some were blue, some were red, some were yellow, and I was just fascinated by that. They're unique machines. Everyone is different. They have cool moving parts like a train or a plane. People are into those, and I'm just into ski lifts, which are just really cool machines. And then they also tend to be in very cool places, like a ski resort with this weird combination of a machine with all this industrial equipment, and then also snow and rocks and trees and nature. And it's kind of a weird combo, but really cool combo of machinery and mountains.
Has it always been like a passion of yours? Like when you were a kid and you started to like them, and it's like when you went back east to go to school for political science, and you were riding chairlifts there. Was there a moment where you're like, I'm going to start a blog? Like, so specifically, that's one of the reasons I think you have is the blog the reason for the travels, or the travels the reason for the blog?
I was interested in chairlifts long before any blog or blogs even existed, even before the internet, even before I went to college. I was always interested in lifts. I remember as a kid, we went one year to Sun Valley to ski, and my parents, I insisted if it was at all possible, to stay after the lifts closed just to watch the lift operators doing what they were doing to shut the lift down. I was just fascinated by that, and I mean that was when I was probably 6, 7 years old, and the blog came way later after college, after I started working at Jackson Hole. Before that, it was just an interest in lifts, an interest in taking pictures of lifts, and sort of riding as many lifts as I could.
Really? So yeah, and that's kind of the same reason I started doing this podcast. Was I just love skiing. I like talking about skiing. I liked hearing other people talk about skiing and listening to their thoughts and opinions and points of view. And I guess that's kind of the same thing for you.
Absolutely, it's the my whole social media around skiing and website and working at a ski resort. That's all kind of secondary to the core interest, which is chairlifts, gondolas, tramways, how they work, and riding as many of them as I can.
Yeah, you've tailored your life around your passion.
Yeah, I'd like to say I have 2 jobs now, really. The blog has kinda turned into a second job, and my main job is at a ski resort, so I have 2 full-time jobs, and they both involve ski lifts.
Yeah, yeah, right. All right, so let's get into that. So you moved to Wyoming. You're living in Jackson now. Why Jackson instead of say like somewhere else, like Utah, where there's 15 lifts or 15 resorts on the Ski Utah page we're just looking at and we're chatting about?
Well, I would have moved to Whistler if I could. They don't like to employ Americans too much,
It's true.
especially as lift operators. So I looked into any possible way to go to Whistler because that was kind of a place near where I grew up, but not near in a real ski town. Um, but wasn't possible unless I met a Canadian or something to marry. Uh, so I wanted to be in a ski town. Washington doesn't have a whole lot of really true ski towns. They have a lot of great ski resorts, but they're kind of just parking lots in the woods. And
Yeah.
Colorado didn't appeal to me super. I Colorado has a reputation for being pretty crowded, and didn't really want to be somewhere crowded. Uh, and so Wyoming Jackson Hole was the first and only resort I applied to work at.
Really? Had you been there before?
Only in the summer. I had never skied at Jackson Hole before I started working there.
Really? And it was there were you there to see the tram?
Well, Big Red is definitely iconic. The tram definitely appealed to me. They also have 2 really cool gondolas, so a nice variety of lifts, not just chairlifts. And it's also a family-run company, which is pretty appealing to me. Not being
Mega
part of a big
Pass.
corporate entity, working at a small company or relatively small company has been pretty awesome.
So working with Jackson and in the lift department, did you sign up just to be a lifty and then work your way kind of up through? Because you said to me, are you running the program there now?
I'm in like middle management. I did start just as a lift operator, seasonal lift operator. I first started on the Bridger Gondola, just loading skis, and actually in that time we were still scanning tickets by hand with
Hmm.
barcode scanners. So that was a big part of my job. Actually, more than half the day was just scanning. Um, but started as a lift operator, then I was a lift lead, and then lift supervisor, and now I'm a year-round full-time lift supervisor.
Now, have you ever considered maybe branching off into like lift maintenance department, right? Where you can actually get right into like the nuts and bolts of a lift. You know, if you have this passion for it, have you ever really wanted to get in there and find out how they work? And I'm sure you have a great deal of knowledge, more than the average bear, obviously. But have you ever considered getting in there and rolling your sleeves up?
I have. It's a really different discipline. Lift mechanics don't work nearly as much with people. I really do like the aspect of guest interaction, and then also we hire 150 lift operators that I get to work with. And mechanics, we have a pretty small team here of a couple dozen mechanics, and they work a lot alone and at night. And um, it's more behind the scenes role, and I really enjoy being kind of front and center at a ski resort. But I know all the lift mechanics very well here, and we work very closely together. And operations and maintenance are two very closely linked disciplines within a ski resort.
Do they ever come to you and be like, "Hey, you were just at this resort," or you know all the information? Like, do people at Jackson use you as like a spy for other resorts and find out what's going on with certain lifts or certain areas or what they're putting in? Because you've got the inside track. Like I remember I sent you, might have been last year or a couple years ago when the Fitzsimmons chair was being put in Whistler. I just was like, I just think I sent you a photo randomly because I was thinking about it, or you came up on my Twitter. But I'm sure that you get that all the time. So you have all this inside track on all of these other resorts and their plans. And does the crew at Jackson be like, hey, what's going on over there? Like, give us the 411.
I think a lot of the lift mechanics spend a lot of their downtime reading my website.
For real?
LiftBlog is quite I think if our IT department looked at the top websites people were on, it would be up there, just because there is quite a bit of downtime when employees are just on call. And whether it's Jackson employees or any other ski resort, I think people who work on lifts tend to be interested in what's going on at other resorts. And so they're always reading what's going on in the industry.
Right, because you're right up on it. So I'm looking at the website right now, which is liftblog.com. And if you're a lover of chairlifts or wanted to find out what's going on, I know Whistler right now, since Vail has come in, has been putting a new lift in almost every year that they've come in. They're currently working on the Jersey Cream chair, from a 4-pack to a 6-pack.
And it's almost done. They've done a really good job getting that up and ready. It'll be ready for opening day, they've promised me.
Yeah, I love how they promised you. It's the first I've heard about it, and I live here. I'm a little annoyed at it because we'll have to see how it goes. So every time a new lift opens in Whistler, it changes the flow of a powder day, or Blackcomb specifically is usually my powder day mountain. When they put in the Whistler Gondola or the Blackcomb Gondola or the new Blackcomb Gondola, for a while both of them were called Blackcomb Gondola. But when they replaced the Wizard chair and Solar chairs and put in that gondola, I was not happy. Still not happy. I didn't ride it the first year. I tend not to ride a chairlift in the first year of its operation.
Oh, is that like a luck thing or bad luck thing?
It's a trust thing.
Oh,
I think it's a trust thing.
I'm the opposite. I try and go on opening day.
Do you? Yeah, no, I don't trust them. I don't want to get stuck on a gondola for an hour, half an hour while they're trying to figure out the bugs. You know,
that's
what I mean?
pretty common. It's pretty common to be fearful of these machines. I especially in the summer here, we run a summer operation here in Jackson that's pretty extensive, and a lot of our customers have never been on lifts, and they're very scared of them. Like, I don't think of them as scary or any sort of major risk taking, but for a lot of these folks who live in maybe the eastern U.S. or some foreign country, it's one of the scariest things they've ever done.
Yeah, heights, right?
The heights,
and
the look of it. Maybe it doesn't look super secure, but behind the scenes,
trapped in a little box. I've been skiing my whole life and never had a problem. A few years ago, I just developed for one winter, I developed like panic attacks where I would get claustrophobic and be like, I don't like this. As soon as it would stop, I would get uncomfortable. I'd be like, I don't want to get stuck here.
Well, that Blackcomb gondola you were talking about with the two sections, it did have a lot of issues at the beginning. It's a complex lift. It was built during a time when a lot of lifts were being built, and it definitely had some issues the first couple seasons.
Yeah, I still don't like to ride it, to be honest with you. And back to my point, it cut off a full run of powder in the morning before everyone else does. Because
Wizard and Solar Coaster were great lifts. I loved those.
And I would prefer, honestly, I prefer to sit on a chair than in a gondola any day. I don't care what the weather is. I would rather be outside sitting on a chair rather than in a box floating around. But what it did was, especially for the COVID, so now it's one line all the way up. There's a mid station where you can get on midway, but they stopped allowing people to get on until 10 o'clock, I think, during COVID. I don't know if that's still a rule or not. So before, you could go up, say, Jersey Cream, cut over, like traverse over into that Solar Coaster zone, ski down first thing in the morning, and you could get to Solar Coaster and still count. Or sometimes you get ahead of the people that came up Wizard, and you could get up and you'd be able to get an extra lap on a powder morning. So now that's been stopped.
Steamboat put in a new gondola last year with a mid station, and the same thing. They won't let you get on at the mid until I think it was 11. And I
Yeah.
was said to the lift operator, I was like, this the whole point of this lift was to get people out of the base area, and you're telling me now and to get back on this lift that has empty cabins going by, I have to go all the way back down to the base area
Right.
and
Yeah.
get on just to get back where I am right now. So yeah, mid stations add some complexity for sure. We have a mid station here on a gondola, and I get the idea of restricting access until a certain point in the morning, but if the lift is not full, then people should be able to get
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, exactly. And like in on the original Blackcomb, the Excalibur gondola on Blackcomb, they load mid station. You can get to mid station. Like there's a parking lot there, and you can
Yep.
actually load mid station and the bottom at the same time in the morning. So you're kind of ahead there as well. Which is nice. But yeah, it's strange to me a lot of times how they operate or how they choose to operate or open certain spots. You know, it's beyond my comprehension. I don't know if it has a lot to do with. I don't know what it has to do with a lot of decisions that are made within ski resorts, specifically this one in the past 20 years. I've just scratched my head and been like, I don't get it. I'm sure it has something to do with money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, that's kind of it with that. But back to the Jersey cream chair we were talking about. I'm a little annoyed at the construction because I lost a GoPro in that zone this winter. And you can hike up and then take the gondola back down, but you can't access that zone. They've blocked it off for hiking or people. You can't actually go because you got to go around the work site.
Yeah. Vail
So
Resorts is very, I mean, rightly, they're very concerned about safety with their construction sites. And, and Vail Resorts in particular doesn't want anybody near a lift construction site, which is understandable. But yeah, that sounds like your GoPro is maybe been buried by now with
no, it
construction
hasn't.
material.
No. It's in the area.
Okay.
I can get to it, but I have to go past or like sneak around the construction area or go
Got
up
it.
like, you know, and like like wear some camo stuff and like sneak through the bushes. Like
Well,
I know where it is, but I have to go into that area. And I think it could be a good thing. That spot or that chair was kind of a basin, and a lot of people would get lined up there on a powder day before they open the crystal chair, before they open the glacier chair. So it's funny. Let me ask you this. And this is something I think about all the time. I haven't done the math on it,
mhm.
but some people are like, I like the 4 chair because powder lasts longer. But in theory, it really only lasts longer just because it takes longer to get everybody to it, right?
Yeah.
Versus, you know, the same amount of people get there. So if you get in line and you're the same, you know, whether it's 6 or 4, you're getting up there faster if it's 6, you're getting up there slower if it's 4. So maybe that's the thing. But I always have this thought. I'm like, is it better as a 6 or better as a 4 for the amount of snow you're going to be able to ski or the access you're going to get?
So this is actually quite misunderstood in a lot of the industry. Like a lot of skiers don't understand that a lot of times when you go from a 4 to a 6, the chairs get further apart. They're not equally spaced on both sizes of lifts. So what a lot of resorts are doing is not even increasing the overall capacity very much because they increase the load interval when they go to a 6. So I'm not sure what the Jersey Cream capacity is going to be. It's probably a bump, but it's not a 50% bump like you would think from 4 to 6. It's more like a 20% bump typically because 6 packs, you can't have the chairs as close together. People wouldn't be able to load like they can on a quad. The bigger the chair, the more time people need generally to get on. And so um, there is a lot of calculation that goes into how much capacity to put where on a mountain. And the chair size itself is not necessarily uh, indicative of the lift capacity.
Interesting. Okay, this is great.
They're
What's
related, but there's a lot of math there.
right? Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. So like, I'm not a fan of 6 packs at all. Do you have like, what is your thought on like, what's your ideal chair?
Well,
Like you've
Jackson
seen,
Hole, the map behind me here, there are no 6 packs. We don't have any.
right?
The owners of Jackson Hole think quads are perfectly adequate, and on this mountain they are. Um, I think there's a place in the ski industry in certain places for bigger chairs. where the new Whistler Fitzsimmons was originally supposed to go at Park City is called Silverlode, and that was like the biggest bottleneck I have ever seen in my entire uh, visit to every ski resort on the continent. And that needed to be a bigger lift. And right now it's a 6-pack, and it needed to be an 8. And some permitting things and a local dispute can't killed that project. And that's how that lift ended up at Whistler. But there's definitely a place for bigger lifts. There's a place for smaller lifts. I think resort managers and designers need to really be careful to match the machine to the mountain that they're building on.
And do you think that they are? Like, do you think a lot of it has to do with that? Do you think a lot of that thought process has as much weight to it as, say, the marketing value of saying, "Hey, we're putting in a new 6-pack or increasing our capacity," versus doing what's right for the terrain, the resort, and the flow of skiers?
I think it depends on the resort. Some do a really good job of it, matching lift capacity and design to the terrain, and some are less. Some are less focused on skiing experience and more focused on maybe appearances and keeping away big lift line photos. Um, so it's a delicate balance.
That's interesting that you say that too, because like Whistler, for instance, Vale, for instance, a lot of quite a few others. You know, you see those consistent social media photos or videos of someone like riding up Crystal Chair or riding up somewhere. You know what I mean? Like Whistler is a busy place. I'll tell you that. It's the largest ski resort in North America. It's 2 amazing mountains. We're an hour and a half away from Vancouver. Tons of local visitors. So we do get a lot of people here. It does get busy.
Yeah.
You'll also have heard me say that you can ski POW all day on a busy day as long as you know where you're going and what route to go, and knowing which lifts open next based on the history of knowing what the patrol is going to do, what the terrain is going to be like. I could write a dissertation on it. But it does get busy. It does get busy. Like the Harmony Express before it became a 6-pack. I think it's fine as a 6-pack now. That's a zone.
It's
Like
huge. Yeah.
it's a zone now where 6 is fine because
Yeah.
it lines up. It lines up on both sides. We used to call it the 2-headed dragon, and then they moved that. They moved that chair, the original Harmony 4-pack,
It's a
over to Blackcomb in
Yeah.
the Crystal Zone, which we had a lot of discussion about when it was putting up how it was going to affect our routes on Blackcomb on a POW day as well. But I like it. But it loads up on both sides, and we still call it the 2-headed dragon, just like old times.
I do think there are a lot of ski resorts that maybe would be better off doing terrain expansions with new lifts rather than just putting in bigger lifts in their existing footprint.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there are environmental concerns and backcountry skiers' concerns, but in some places they really do need more terrain, not just bigger lifts.
Spread the people out.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
I
fully
spent
agree.
a lot of time at Whistler as a kid. We would always go there for our Thanksgiving, which was usually opening, right around opening weekend, and yeah, those mountains are 2 of my favorites anywhere.
Yep, I agree. I always tell people I'm a little bit spoiled. I'll go somewhere else and be like, "That's it."
Yeah.
Or when people come here and visit and I show them around, they're like, "Holy smokes, man, this place is massive." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's only one of the mountains too."
And people can complain all they want about, the heavy snow or the warm snow or the rain, but it snows more than almost anywhere, and I love it.
Yeah, you're spoken like a true gentleman from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So do you have, and I asked you about like whether you have a preference. Do you have, like you said, you alluded to the 4-pack. I think the 4-pack is a perfect chair, personally, for many, many, many reasons. And a lot of those reasons are based around skiing and the ability to load a chair. I think a 4-pack, if you're skiing on a powder day, they say no friends on a powder day. I think that's the stupidest thing ever. That's the best time to have your friends with you. But if you get to the bottom and they're not there, you wait, maybe you load and you find out where they are after. It's a loose rule. No friends on a powder day. But I think the 4-pack is perfect because
And
that's a perfect crew on a POW day is 4. Any more than that, it gets a bit much. You want to stick to one chair.
the high-speed quad, it's the North American workhorse. It's the most common lift in North America, perhaps with the exception of the fixed grip quad. The Europeans have a totally different view. They don't build 4-person detachables anymore, really. they think the 6-pack and the 8 are the future. They don't do 4s anymore, almost hardly ever. And they think we're crazy for keeping to build high-speed quads. But I think they're great. I'm right there with
That's
you.
a question. Are there places still building a lot of 4-speed quads? Because I know that it's not really happening here. Every time I hear of a new lift going in, it's got 6 or 8 in it out
Oh,
here as well.
they're still being installed. Maybe not at the biggest mountains, maybe not at the Vail Mountains or the Altera Mountains, but quite a few of the independent ski areas, like Jackson Hole, we're putting one in right now
They're
this
being
summer.
taken from those big resorts and then brought over to the small. They're buying them. The small resorts are buying them and putting them in there, right?
Some of that, some moving, but also new ones. Like the one going in here is a brand new one this summer.
Right on. So, anyways, yes, the 4-pack is ultimate. Let me ask you this: do you have any chairlifts at home? Chairs at home? Because I know whenever they retire a lift here, they do an auction and they donate it to a charity like the Whistler Blackcomb Foundation or something along those lines.
I do. It's not here. I'm in Jackson in a tiny apartment that's old, and I don't think my HOA would allow me have it outside. So I have a double chair from Mount Baker, Washington.
Oh, nice,
In my mother's garage in Seattle right now.
nice.
I tell her it's one of the best investments in her house or that she has in her possession, because I bought it for $35 from Mount Baker ski area, and I think now they're going for about $1,100, $1,200, $1,300.
What chair was it?
It was chair 4, which was a riblet center pole double with no bar, classic green Pacific Northwest color, and it's in the garage at my mom's house, waiting for me to finally have a place to put it.
That's cool. What are some of the most unique things you've seen with like repurposed chairs or gondolas?
It's great when they're at bars because they actually get used. I see a lot of them in front yards when I'm driving around near ski areas. Resorts, I like when they're in a restaurant at a resort or somewhere outside on a deck. You can sit and use one. A swing is always the best when you can actually sit in it like you're skiing.
Yeah, I have a few friends that have swings and chairs. In Whistler, the old Whistler Gondola, the pillbox.
Yeah.
Do you know Callum Pettit,
No,
pro
I
skier?
don't.
He has started to turn them into saunas.
Oh, gondolas.
Yeah, the gondola pods that people get. So they're all over town.
Awesome.
You know, there's one at the Alpine Cafe out in Alpine, and like people can go and have dinner in there and whatnot. A lot of them are on front yards, and they're all over town. But he created a little business where he was lining them with the cedar wood and made them into saunas, which I thought was really cool.
That is awesome. Yeah, they should never go to waste. Decommissioned chairs. They should, and a lot of ski resorts auction them off for charity, like Whistler does, which is great.
I personally really want a crystal chair, like the original. There was the original triple fixed grip chair. The first 10 years or so that I lived here, I'm sure I've ridden every single one of them. I see them all over. I see them occasionally around town, and I'm doing my best to try and track one down because I really want one.
I believe the most of Crystal Chair went to Cherry Peak in Utah, which was a new ski resort developed right around the same time as that was decommissioned. So most of that lift is still spinning as a lift.
Really?
Down in Utah. But they probably had some extra chairs because it's quite a bit shorter now than it was when it was on Blackcomb.
I love how you just know that. Like it,
lifts, yeah. They get moved around, and I do really follow what lifts are going where and what's getting installed and what's getting removed. And the best use of an old lift is to stay a lift at another ski resort rather than being scrapped and have the chairs sold. But the second best thing is to sell the chairs.
So I have a friend who lives in Switzerland, Ellie, and she has worked as a like project manager, I think for Doppelmayr. So she's like running the project of building ski lifts. Have you ever been able to be invited into that process, or have you ever been privy to like seeing what goes on behind the scenes as they're building a lift, like in person?
I have. So I last winter, after I was almost done with this quest of visiting every ski resort in the US and Canada, I had some time to go on a ski trip to Europe, and I went to Austria, which is the home of Doppelmayr, and I got to see their factory. It's in Wolfurt, Austria, and they build a lot of the lifts for not only Europe but also the whole world there. So there were lifts there for Whistler. Like the Fitzsimmons chair was built in Wolfurt, Austria.
Just
And
walking into a place like that, are you like Charlie walking into the chocolate factory?
yeah,
You're
they
just
wouldn't
like,
let
oh
me
my
take
god.
pictures. They were very kind of secretive about pictures, but it was incredible. They had every kind of machinery, robotic welding, tons of people working on different parts for lifts, uh, and all the labels you could see on both a screen and uh, on the parts themselves. They had labels saying where they were going, and just the ski resorts of the world. I mean, some were going to Asia, some were going to the U.S., some were going to Canada, and to see all the ski resorts and all these lift parts in one factory was pretty incredible.
That's amazing. Have you? I've just had a thought. Have you seen that dude? That the English guy that wears the like 360 camera on his forehead that like follows trains around.
I have not,
Uh,
but I have seen train enthusiasts before. I mean, it's a kind of a similar thing to a ski lift enthusiast.
yeah, are you big on trains too? Like, do you have an affinity for trains? Maybe not quite as severe, but
I've always liked trains, but I haven't really been around them much. There are no trains in Jackson Hole, so
oh,
uh,
actually, this was completely random. I forgot you told me that you just got off a big train
I
train trip.
did go on a train last week in
Yeah.
Canada.
The Rocky Mountaineer, like across BC.
Yeah, so my mom retired a couple weeks ago, and it was my birthday last week, and so it was my idea to go on this train trip from. We flew into Calgary and then caught the train in Banff. Went went through Lake Louise, Golden, Revelstoke, Kamloops. The only terrible thing was about it was I couldn't convince him to stop and let me off the train to see the ski resorts.
Uh, do you like dabble in people like train enthusiasts have model trains? Do you have like the Lego like ski lift set, or like do you have like little mini working like chairlifts like around your apartment?
Uh, I may have a few chairlifts.
As he looks up.
My fireplace has some model chairlifts there,
Yeah, nice.
and there's a bell from Doppelmayr when they sent me from when I finished visiting all the lifts in uh, North America. They gave me that bell, which is what they give to a ski resort when they open a new lift.
No way. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Any like bull wheels or anything lying around?
No, I could have many at this point, but I've tried to resist. I really don't have a lot of space here. I live in a very small apartment, so
It's
uh,
almost a blessing, right? It's like because if you weren't in a small place, you'd be loading it up.
yeah. And I'm always visiting ski resorts and skiing and working, so I'm really never home. So I don't need anything fancy.
Right. So when you go to a ski resort, are you going and like, let's say it's a POW day, are you going to ski POW, or are you just trying to traverse the hill and get on as many lifts as possible?
I hate to say it. I know this is the low pressure podcast, but I actually really prefer high pressure for what I'm doing in terms of visiting lifts and taking pictures of lifts. I really like being able to see up the line or down the line and enjoy the lift. And there's a place for storm skiing, but for the purely lift riding perspective, um, I really like a sunny day.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So I'm interested in some of your travels here. So how long did it take for you to complete that? So first of all, how many different resorts or areas did you get to?
It's a nice round number. As far as I can tell, it was 750, uh,
750.
which is a weirdly round number. But when I got to the end, which was Moose Mountain in the Yukon, that was number 750.
Wow. And then how many lifts did you ride in this time? Did you keep track of that?
Just under 3,000, and it gets a little fuzzy if you count like the new Fitzsimmons and Whistler, and the old one is that two lifts or one lift. Uh, but
It's like a
some of them I've ridden
1.5.
twice. Yeah,
I think that's two. I think that counts as two because they're two different, like same line.
yeah. I
In
do a
certain,
new entry on my website when a lift gets replaced.
yeah,
Uh,
that's cool, and you can put them side by side if you need to. Like for instance, the crystal chair. It's still called the crystal chair, but it was a different. It's a different angle. There's a different line,
totally different. Yeah.
and then
Sometimes they
so
just put them right where the old one was. Sometimes they even reuse the same foundations. It just depends on the project.
yeah, right. So what are some of the like? So obviously, you're traveling around North America. Um, is there any? I didn't even look. Is there any? Like, have you been? Is there a lift in every state?
Almost. There are only. It depends a little bit on the year, but right now there are about. I think there are 4 states that don't have any sort of lift.
So not only have you been to all of these resorts and areas, but you've been to almost every state and province in the continent
I've been to
too.
every province way before. I still haven't been to every state, but I've been to every province
There
and
are
the
only 10. There are only 10 of them.
yeah, but it's a big country. I spent a
True.
lot of time in Canada, and Canada is a rural country and a just massive country and a very diverse country, and I don't think there are too many people who've been to as much of Canada as I have.
You've been to more than I have. I'm ashamed to say it, but I have never been to the Maritimes myself.
Yeah, and
I
there's a
haven't.
bunch of provinces in the Maritimes and a bunch of ski resorts all over.
Yeah, right. And then through the states. And what about Mexico? You left Mexico off. I know that they'll probably have lifts doing somewhere or something.
There are a few lifts in Mexico. There's a bit of a safety issue in Mexico, especially a lot of the lifts are like urban gondolas in some impoverished areas of
Hmm.
Mexican cities, which are really cool. But I'm not sure if I want to go wandering through some of the poorer areas around Mexico City with my camera. Um, I
Fair.
mean, I've heard it's probably decently safe in that area, but so far I've just done the U.S. and Canada.
Right. Any wild like travel stories that kind of stick out to you? You know, because like any traveling, you're coming up with stories, no matter whether you're going like driving across the country or you're flying to a different continent or whatever. No matter where you're going, there's crazy things that happen. You're in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time. You know,
There
what are
is
some of
one lift. There's one lift I never made it to the top of, which was the old Challenger at Big Sky. Broke down, catastrophic gearbox failure when I was partway up, and
Oh, no, so that must have been like the greatest thing ever for you. You
it
actually get to
was everybody
experience.
else. It was cold. It was windy. It was Montana in the middle of winter. Everybody else was so mad. My dad was behind me on a chair behind me, and he was like, "This is the worst thing ever," and I was so excited. I got to get roped down, and luckily they were pretty quick. They knew pretty quickly that it wasn't going to get fixed, and the ski patrol came and said, "We're going to rope everybody down. Just be patient." And I had actually worked and helped with lift evacuations at work here in Jackson, and but never been on the other end of it. So I got to get roped off the old Challenger chair at Big Sky, and it actually never ran again. They didn't fix it that winter, and then they replaced it the next summer.
So you got the last ride.
The last ride on the old Challenger, and I only made it 2/3 of the way up.
Okay, so when you get down to the bottom, so I know Whistler specifically, if a chairlift stops or something like that, there'll usually be a dude or someone at the top handing out like free hot chocolate
Yeah,
free hot
that's me
chocolate
here in
vouchers or
Jackson.
yeah, are you the hot chocolate voucher guy?
Yep, I am. I
So
signed them.
so at the the Montana Big Sky one, when they find out that it's you, are they like are they like trying to buddy up with like a pass and like a couple free nights or something like that? We're like, hey, if this is going in the blog, like,
This was pretty early on in the process before I had like the whole Big Sky press team in my phone. So I don't think I said anything to the ski patrollers other than thank you, and I was probably taking a few more pictures than everybody else, but I didn't ask for anything, and I really wasn't looking for anything. I just liked seeing how the lift evac worked.
uh, I was gonna ask that. I love that how that came up. So I know that like every once in a while there are like some pretty catastrophic failures with lifts. Um, you know, Whistler's had its fair share. Some tragic, some fortunately not tragic, but still odd. You know, people have been left overnight in a gondola cabin. Bolts have, I guess, unwound due to ice
hmm
expansion.
That tower
Chair
at Blackcomb, ice jacking they call it, where it filled with water and
yeah,
split.
right over the river.
Yeah.
And then you know, like I'm thinking there's that a couple years ago that one in Europe where it just kind of backed up and started spinning and launching people off the chairs. You know, every once in a while something happens. So when that happens, you know, are with your role or your, I guess, platform, are you just there as like an objective observer trying to write the facts of what it is that you've learned, like what information you've gathered from it? Or are you like subjectively putting in like your opinions on this or that and the other? Because you've been to every resort. Like this is what you do. You're a resort and a chairlift expert. So based on all of your experiences, with work and this blog, there's few people that know more about lifts than you do, other than those who work to build them and create them and design them. So when something goes catastrophically wrong, are you just reporting on it, or are you giving your opinions on it?
Well, yeah, a couple things. I do have quite a lot of knowledge, having worked on these machines now for a while, going to all the different resorts. It's very helpful to have a working knowledge of how lifts work to be able to write about accidents. Luckily, they are quite rare. This last season was very safe, and every season is quite safe. And uh, the industry learns every time there's an accident, there are things that are taken away and then gone into new lifts to improve them. So I don't have any qualms getting on any lift in this country or in Canada any day of the season. When something does happen, I usually try and find pictures of it or video. There are a lot of clues in there, uh, and I'll try and just keep to the facts, report what happened as best I can tell. I often do have my own opinion in the background, but I try not to write that too much unless it's obvious what's happened.
Mhm.
The good thing
Now,
about my
is this just because you want to stay in the good graces of these places, or it's just you don't both feel that it's your place?
that's a little bit of it, that I work in the ski industry and it is a small industry, but also I just don't want to uh, be wrong,
Mm.
and that would not be good to be wrong when all the facts aren't out. So I've learned over the years of writing about these things to try and keep it to the facts as best I can tell. And then luckily, a lot of industry people do read my website and comment. So a lot of even more experienced lift mechanics and electricians and professionals that really know the technical side will chime in and say, this is what I think happened, or it looks like this happened. And that's usually even more informative than what I write, which is mostly just kind of what when why, or what when where.
Hmm. Interesting.
But yeah, Whistler has had a quite a few, not recently, but throughout its history, it is a very large resort with a lot of lifts. The Quicksilver incident in Creekside, in particular,
94. Yep.
was
I used to ride that chair all the time. I used to be in in high school, and we were on a race team, and we would go to Creekside, ride up the Quicksilver, and then one year when the accident happened and the chairlifts kind of slid back and then knocked a few off, unfortunately someone lost their life. We ended up
that's
having to.
still that's still one of the worst accidents in the North American ski industry as far as lifts go
Really?
since it started.
Do you ever think about what you do if something happened, and like how you would like release yourself from the chair if it fell? Like, do you ever like, let's say like sometimes I'll be walking in the forest with my dog, and I'm like, well, if I ever got attacked by a cougar, I'd grab this rock, and just just coming up with scenarios in your head. But I'm sure most people have thought like, what if this thing fell? Because
I'm
there's
I'm
there's
usually
moments
too
in time
I'm
when you're
usually too
going.
focused on what the lift is looking like and how I can get a good picture of it and how I'm enjoying it, rather than thinking about that.
Never daydreamed, hey? So I know sometimes I'll be going over a zone, it's like, I could jump off of here. Or there's a spot where like, okay, if I fell off of here, if I landed like this, I could be fine. Or if you're in a high spot, you're like, all right, if this thing let go, like what would I do? Or if I'm in a gondola cabin that fell, what would I jump at the bottom? How would I roll out of it? You've never do you
Yeah, I
have
think something that people should realize is all modern lifts now are designed to roll back at a controlled speed. Like, we can run them in reverse if we needed to, if somebody's dangling, or if for some mechanical reason we need to go backwards. A controlled rollback at a set speed is not entirely uncommon. That situation you saw in Georgia, the country, where the chairlift rolled back at high speed, was ended up being a human error, where a mechanic messed up and bypassed and did the wrong thing when there was a power outage. Um, so that's an entirely different situation from what most people would maybe possibly experience, which is just a lift running backwards because it's set to go backwards. Um,
right? And has the clamp ever released off of the cable?
very, very occasionally it does happen. Sometimes involves ice, or some very particular scenario where it is possible. But those clamps, we call them grips, are very, very powerful and designed not to come off unless they're forced off in the station.
Right. Now, another kind of local story which got a lot of news was the Squamish Gondola, Squamish Valley Gondola,
Yeah.
which had its cable cut not once but twice.
It was just the 5-year anniversary since the first one.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's been around 4 years since the second one. That is one of the most crazy stories I've written about since I started my blog in 2015. To have that happen at all is incredible. And then the second time, I couldn't even believe that I was reading a news story about the same thing happening a second time. The person who did that, or if it was multiple people, uh, very, very, very dangerous what they did, because there's an incredible amount of force on these lifts. And
Intention.
yes, thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds under tension, even when it's running or not. And to cut that with a hand tool in the dark on the side of a mountain at night, that's incredible. A, that they didn't get hurt, and then B, that they haven't been caught, and 2 times. So I'm very grateful that they haven't done it a third time. And I know the police still have the case open.
Yeah, sorry, I said Squamish Valley is a Sea to Sky Gondola,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful scenic gondola overlooking Howe Sound, and you can go up and do some ski touring up there, or you can hike up. They've got a great little patio, and they do live music up there on Friday nights. It's pretty nice. But yeah, like even here, it boggled everyone's mind. How have you not found anybody? Like,
Yeah.
how is this? Obviously, there's a trail out of there that you can walk out of there.
Well, having spent a
Um,
lot of time poking around ski resorts and lifts in the off season, like, I wasn't surprised that it was possible. Uh, I mean, it's the wilderness around these ski resorts. You really are in the middle of nowhere, a lot of them. And the lift towers have ladders intentionally for access for mechanics. So it just normally isn't something that somebody would try and do, put their own life in danger to make a point, I guess.
Yeah, wild like that. Like you snap a cable like that, it'd cut you in half if you got it in the wrong spot, you know?
Yeah.
And who knows what's gonna happen when it's got gondolas hanging from it. I don't know if they take the gondolas off and
They
put
do
them in a
now. They didn't at the
building now.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't the first
Fool me
time, and they
once, shame
hadn't
on
the second
us.
time.
Fool me twice, shame. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool us twice, shame on us.
And
But
they've
the fact that
invested in a whole lot of security now. They have all the security cameras and sensors, and
yeah,
don't even
I'm sure they have like
publish all
alarm
of it.
sensors on the ladders and things like that too.
And they
But
don't
like
even have ladders anymore. I think they took the ladders off, and so the poor mechanics now have to haul a ladder every time they want to go up a tower. They have to bring their own ladder the because of those crimes.
Have you heard I'm sure you've heard a lot of, like, the potential motive for it. I know that, they wanna build a new resort down in the Garibaldi area, down in Squamish, like a ski resort, and some people think that maybe it was opponents to that, or them or opponents to that, or had something to do with that, but there's so many different theories that who knows, man? Like, it's still shocking to me. What's your favorite?
My favorite or
Did you have
favorite theory on it.
Yeah,
Um,
or
I
what
probably am trying to make some sort of environmental statement or a statement about bringing tourists into the climbing area nearby. But having hiked there a bunch, it was already heavily logged, and they put in a gondola in an area that wasn't exactly totally pristine. And the gondola is pretty awesome. I think they did a really nice job with it. It's pretty tastefully done. So hopefully, whatever point was being made or tried to be made is has moved on from now.
You're right, right.
But yeah,
Um,
crazy story.
yeah, wild. You must have been loving that. You're like, "Oh."
Well, it
Do
was a
do
crazy story, but I don't like writing about accidents or, people being in danger, but I do find it interesting. But
you love the story and the like, maybe that's what I meant. Like, you don't
yeah,
love that happened, but you're like,
yeah.
"Oh, wow, this
Luckily,
is some."
nobody was hurt, which was good both
Yeah,
times.
yeah, but when it comes down to, like, you having news to dig your teeth in and analyze and share, like, that's what I meant by that.
I remember where I was the second time I was driving down a highway in Pennsylvania between a couple ski areas, and I had to stop at a highway rest stop and figure out what the hell was going on.
What is happening? Yeah. I love it. So kinda wrapping up, I want you to kinda tell me some of your favorite, uh, maybe top 3 favorite places or top 3 favorite lifts. Do you have any? Are you able to do that?
I have lots of favorites because there's so many. I mean, I learned a long time ago lifts tend not to be in ugly places or non-cool places. Pretty much no matter where you are, if there's a lift, it's the coolest place around. Um, as we covered, Whistler Blackcomb, I would say, is my favorite ski resort. Um, I grew up going there. It's the
Any
biggest.
favorite lifts
Um, a
or
little
memorable
controversial
lifts?
as a skier there. But the peak to peak is an incredible lift. It's obviously not got a whole lot of skiing right from either terminal, but um,
I'm just asking you from your like love of lifts. That doesn't have to have anything to do with skiing. I just want you to
yeah.
tell me like what are some of your favorites that you've come across in all of these travels?
So the peak to peak at Whistler I just mentioned is the most technologically advanced kind of marquee lift in North America. So that's probably my favorite. A number two would be the Bridger Gondola at Jackson because it's the first lift I worked on, and it's
Mhm.
also 2,700 vertical feet in 8 minutes. Um, so that's a really cool one. And then I would say my favorite lift at the resort I grew up skiing at Crystal in Washington is Northway Chair, which was built when I was in high school, and it's a double chair, which are not a lot of double chairs get built these days, but they built a double chair in I think it was 2006 ish, and it opened up a whole bunch of terrain that is just classic Northwest tree skiing.
I love it. I love it. My current favorite chair is the Glacier chair on Blackcomb, which is just beside Jersey Cream. And part of me hopes they never upgrade it to a six pack. I don't think it really needs it.
Yeah,
Jersey, yes. I'd say Jersey, yes, just because the lineups get so big and it is what it is. But
Seventh Heaven will probably go 6 pack, but Glacier hopefully. I mean, it's going to have to be replaced from a technical perspective eventually, but they
Mhm.
could just replace it with another quad.
I'll get one of those chairs for sure because I can guarantee you I've been on every single one of those
Yeah,
many times, and it's just such a special place to me. And like I said, I have a huge affinity for chairlifts. Um,
that's
just
going to be a hell of a project replacing the Glacier Express because the topography there, uh, some of those cliffs that goes past and by
goes
and
over.
is
Yeah,
are that was a quite the project when they built that, and it will be again when they replace it.
some of the scariest moments I've ever had on chairlift was on that chair. Just to the point where it's blowing like crazy and you're like suspended like 200, 300 feet above the ground. Um, swinging back and forth. It's moving at a snail's pace. Like
And it's
I
really
have
steep in spots. That lift is quite steep in spots.
absolutely, absolutely. Like I have so many, and I was thinking about this earlier today, knowing that I'd have you on the show, and I often think about this. Just my love for the chairlift and its ability to allow me to do what I do, and like just everything from access, being able to access what you love to do, being forced and forced is an interesting way of saying it, but being forced to sit down and talk to people, like even now, no one pulls their phone out of their pocket when they're very rarely because it's cold. You can't get your hands out, and you've got 10 minutes to sit and talk to the people next to you about the most amazing thing that you just did. You could have just done the greatest thing in your entire life, the most fun 2 or 3 minutes you've ever had in your entire life skiing a power run with the people that you like, and you're sitting on the chairlift, conversing, talking, having a good time. Or maybe it's a sunny day and you're skiing by yourself and you get on, you're starting to chat with someone, learning about them and a different way of life and a different place. There's just, or maybe you're on it by yourself and you get a moment of like, quiet contemplation, forced for 10, 12 minutes, listening to the whir of the wheels as the chair goes over them. Like there's just so many moments that I think about now that a chairlift offers that just makes me love it so much.
There's not many places in life today where you both the things you mentioned where you're conversing with strangers and it's totally normal. And then also when you're just alone somewhere for 10 minutes or 15 minutes without a phone where you're just enjoying the surroundings. So yeah, chairlifts offer both of those things.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I love them so much. Um, I don't know if it's even close to the level of you, and I love your dedication to it. I really appreciate your dedication to it, and congratulations. You know, that you hear of people doing, going to every single like NHL stadium or every single MLB ballpark, and they're like, "Wow, that's such a feat." You went to 750 resorts, ski areas, and over 3,000 chairlifts. That is pretty spectacular.
Thank you. I don't think I'll miss trying to explain it to Canadian customs. They were always like, "Why are you going to Winnipeg and all these random second-tier Canadian cities?" They were like, "Why are you coming from Wyoming to go skiing in the middle of the prairies in Alberta?" And I just had to explain it over and over again. So that part is good to be done with.
Fair enough. Hey, well, Peter, thank you so much for coming on the show. And for people that listened, where can they find all of your things?
So my website is my number one thing is liftblog.com. That's where I have a lift database of all the lifts in North America, pictures, and then I have kind of the news section. And then I have quite an active X account, I guess it's called now,
Mhm.
where I just kind of comment on ski industry happenings and whatever I think is interesting. And then I have a LiftBlog Facebook and Instagram as well.
Right. It looks like your Instagram is a little bit lacking lately, so maybe you have to.
I post
Maybe we can have
I post a lot of Instagram stories, but
stories,
not
right?
so
Yeah,
many Instagram posts. So today
I
I posted pictures of the snow in Jackson because it snowed today at the top of the tram.
nice. I personally like doing little reels of like
Mhm.
different chairlifts that I'm on in different locations. I've done a handful of them. I'm gonna start tagging you in them.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out. I love chairlifts.
Yeah, keep an eye out. Hey, man, thanks so much, and really cool talking to you. I love your dedication and your enthusiasm for something that I think most of us listening take for granted. To be honest,
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. Have a great winter.
yeah, we'll do it. You too, and everybody, go check out LiftBlog. Follow Peter, and if you have a ski resort that you like to frequent or you live near, well, follow that LiftBlog, and you're probably going to get some information that you had no idea you needed to know. Cool, man. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Mark.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.